So, this is Sukkot, in case you didn't know. All right. Were any of you here for the Mincha? Who's here for the Mincha? Okay, so the Mincha, you know how we did the Hallel with the Psalms? We're going to do that. We're going to talk about that today as well. Okay, so it would have actually been really cool. I didn't know we were going to do that for Mincha, so I thought it was really cool. My voice is going away. I haven't felt well for the past week. It's been going around. So I do have a lot of breaks for discussion on this one, so don't hate me for that. Okay, but it's necessary for me to keep my voice for the whole time. Also, it's better to hear it from someone else as well, not just me. Okay, that way you're not falling asleep. Okay. So Sukkot. In case you didn't know, this is a sukkah. Okay, so if we go outside, we have one built over there. We also have a miniature one. I didn't know we did for inside. That was cool. So that's a sukkah. We'll talk about that later. Today we're going to be covering a couple of things. Okay. Also, today is going to be kind of short. We coordinated with Pastor and everything, so it should end around the same time. Okay, around the same time. And in case we don't, I have a booklet. Okay, so we'll be good. Or we can spend time under the sukkah. It's up to you. So today we're going to talk about the historical context of pilgrimage festivals. Do you know the 3 pilgrimage festivals? Anybody? I'll give you one. Sukkot. What's another one?
Passover.
Passover. You're so smart, Johnny. Yes. What's another one? Shavuot. Good. So we're going to talk about the historical context and the covenantal context as well for those. We're going to talk about what Sukkot is and some of the details. And then also we're going to talk about John 7 and connect Sukkot to that. Okay. So let's do the blessing. Blessed Adonai who is blessed. Blessed is Adonai who is blessed now and forever. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who has chosen us from among the peoples and given us the Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, who gives the Torah. So, historical context. Y'all remember the suzerain vassal covenant? The treaty, suzerain vassal? I think we've talked about this every single week this year. We really have. So, suzerain vassal, we'll review, in case you don't know. Okay? It's between a head honcho and a not-so head honcho. Okay? The not-so head honcho is going to be the vassal, and the head honcho is going to be the suzerain. The vassal has to submit to the suzerain and do whatever the suzerain says. So, Johnny, say you're the suzerain, and I am the vassal. If you tell me, hey, you have to come meet with me 3 times a year and bring offerings and pay tribute, that's what I'll have to do. Okay, so we'll talk about those pilgrimage festivals in the context of the suzerain vassal. Okay, in the ancient Near East, the relationships between in the suzerain vassal treaties were actually mainly done between kings, priests, and deities. Okay, so like the head deity would be the one in charge, and the priests and all that. So that's where the relationships between the suzerain vassal treaties were mainly done between the kings, the priests, and the gods. But we don't have other deities. So I have like many typos. So I don't know what deitals are, but it's supposed to be deities. Okay, so we don't have other deities. So it'd be between kings and priests. But, go ahead. They would be invoked as witnesses.
Yeah, they're not really involved with the covenant. Israel's the only one that has God directly involved.
Yeah, thank you. But Torah is different though, because instead of it being between just say 2 kings, it's between each and every single individual, which is really interesting. So it's not just one king paying tribute to the king, suzerain. It's every single one of us going to Jerusalem, all of us. Okay. So, but this privilege though, it carries responsibility to follow the commandments of the covenant. Okay, because if you're a vassal king and you're paying tribute to the suzerain king, you have to follow the commandments as well. Okay, and that shows whenever we have to go to Jerusalem, whenever they built the temple, okay, and then to pay tribute. That's what we're doing whenever we go to the pilgrimage festivals and you bring an offering. What you're doing is you're paying tribute to your suzerain king. Okay. Like I just said, the vassal is required to appear regular before his sovereign, and he cannot come empty-handed. You have to pay tribute. It's like a tax. Okay. Didn't that happen with Abraham? If he were to purchase that property, he'd have to give the the tax, right, or something to tribute to the king. That would be treason. So in Hittite treaties, which we have a lot of suzerain vassal treaties from Hittite, okay, from that context. So the Hittite treaties are between kings, but in God's covenant, it's between God and each and every individual, not just the kings. Okay, the 3 pilgrimages are parallel to the vassal's requirement to pay tribute to the suzerain. Okay, that's what it is, and it's not a bad thing. Okay, paying tribute to your suzerain is a good thing because it shows that we're loyal. That's what that means. So by approaching the temple with offerings, not empty-handed, it shows that we are loyal to him as our suzerain. That's what that means. Okay? I remember for the longest time, I was always confused. Like, what's the point of us showing up to Jerusalem with offerings? Like, I never really understood it until we studied the covenants, and I understand, oh, I'm paying tribute to my sovereign king. That's what that is. Okay? Alrighty. So now, again, this is my water break, and this is your discussion time. Okay, so everybody, if you would like, stand up. Talk with your neighbors about how Sukkot may relate to a covenantal relationship. Okay?
How Sukkot relate to the covenant relationship? So
How can Sukkot relate to a covenantal relationship? You gonna stay awake today? You gonna stay awake? You had your coffee? Okay. All right, ready? Any ideas? I kind of gave you all the answers. Any ideas?
we speak.
Yeah. What'd y'all talk about? This all has a purpose. What'd y'all talk about? Go ahead. Responsibility. Good. To what? What are we responsible for by paying tribute? What does it show? That we're loyal and that we'll keep the commandments. Okay. Alrighty. So review. The suzerain is a not so head honcho. True or false? The suzerain. That is false. Who is the not so head honcho? The vassal. Okay. The blank has to submit to the suzerain. The vassal. Good. Who were suzerain vassal treaties mainly done with in the ancient Near East? Priests and kings. Good. What is our responsibility because God's covenant is extended to each individual? What's our responsibility? What was that? Pay tribute, but more than that. By doing the commandments. Good. Who was supposed to appear regularly and pay tribute to the suzerain? The vassal king. Good. And what were the 3 pilgrimages? What was that? Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Good. All right. So I want to distinguish pagan versus Israelite festivals. Okay. So pagans were polytheistic. Okay, we've talked about this. Polytheistic, many gods. Okay. Many theistic gods. Okay. We've talked about this just about, I think, again, every single week. That we've contrasted pretty well, I think, over the course of the past few months about what the Torah does differently than the pagans. And we're going to talk about that today as well. So in the festivals of the pagans, they were polytheistic, meaning many gods, and they were idolatrous in that sense. The banquets were held to feed the gods. Now, question, does God need to be fed? No, he does not. Okay, so we already see a difference. Sacred objects. This is really interesting. Whenever I read about this, I imagine them just like crowd surfing some holy object, right? Which is probably what they did. But the sacred objects would be brought out and paraded around with. Okay? Literally imagine the Ark of the Covenant being brought out and like crowd surfed by people. That's bad. That's not good. Okay, don't do that. It's usually only witnessed by high-ranking people. So the elites, if you had a lot of money, you got kings, priests, the law people. Who else would be the politicians? They would be able to witness these festivals, okay, whereas the normal people wouldn't really have that. Yes? Yeah, exactly, because you would have wealth. Yes. But in Israel, it's monotheistic, meaning one God. Okay, God does not need food, so the offerings are not for that. It's to restore the covenant relationship and pay tribute. The sacred objects are to be kept in the temple, okay, not to be paraded around with and crowd served. Okay, the functions as a covenantal relationship, not as actually that should be on the next slide. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that you should, in a way, all these like festivals, pilgrimage ones,
Mhm.
because they're going to eat the offerings that they do.
Right.
So it's like a covenantal meal.
That's true. So now we're going to talk about the functions, why they do it. Okay, so now we know what they do. Banquets, okay, parading around with holy objects. Not going to lie, a lot of them were fertility. So that comes with fertility stuff, which we have kids. So we'll talk about that some other time, okay? So the functions of pagan festivals, though, were to honor certain gods, to commemorate the past, to celebrate harvest, which would be fertility, and with that comes a lot of other stuff, to purify sacred objects and spaces, to judge people. Now, that sounds kind of familiar because the Sukkot is actually revolving around the harvest. Okay, think about Yom Kippur, purifying a sacred object and spaces. To commemorate the past. Today, it's this whole week is about the Exodus and living in the wilderness. Okay, go ahead.
Then you got to look at the differences. Like, for example, the reason why they purify like the spaces is because they believe that demons
Yeah.
that would like defile everything. But God says it's not the demons;
It's your
it's your sins that do it. And
Sure.
then when it comes to the past, they not only do we both look at the past, we also both look at.
I'll just give you that.
We also look at the future, though.
Mhm.
Like that's something that's interesting about our feast too, because we and Israel understand that this is also pointing to something prophetic in the future time. But for the pagans, this is just a ritual.
Yeah, it's a one-time thing, and they just keep doing it over and over again. Right. So to commemorate the past is somewhat parallel. It's to commemorate God's role in history. I think Passover, Sukkot, foreshadow as well of events, which is pretty interesting. How it's commemorating the past and also foreshadowing the future. Emphasis on God's care and saving of His people. Now that is not paralleled in the ancient Near East. The emphasis of the deity's care and saving of the people you're not going to find that in the ancient Near East in festivals, which is pretty cool. So again, this is my water. I need him. Okay, I'm sorry. Please discuss with yourselves about how God's festivals are different than the pagan ones. I'll put this here. And why it's important. Think about why that's important as well. Okay.
Yeah, I was talking about that before, and I didn't think about it, but we're the only ones that think about the future. They don't even think about it. They don't even know what's going to happen in the future. But God tells us like, hey,
It's kind of sad. Really sad.
but it's a good selling point.
Alrighty, go ahead. Well, I lost my cup that keeps it warm. I don't know what it is. I do, I just don't know what it is. And so whenever I find it, I will. But I've already had a lot of hot beverages. Alright, so let's review really quick. Banquets were held to feed the gods. Is this pagan or Israelite? Pagan. Does God need food? No. Usually only witnessed by elites. Pagan or Israelite? Pagan. Good. Sacred objects are kept in the sacred space. Pagan or Israelite? Israelite. Good. Emphasis on the deity's care and saving of the deity's people. Pagan or Israelite? Good job. Sorry. All right, let's talk about Sukkot. We're shifting gears. Now, we talked about how Sukkot is paralleling a suzerain vassal treaty and the clause to pay tribute to the king. Okay, we've established that. Now, what do? Right? So we're told to come up to Jerusalem and do Sukkot, but let's talk about what we do and at least some of the elements. There's many traditions as to what to do and how to do it. Okay, so I'm not going to dive into the traditions because I don't want to overstep and step on people's toes. That's not what I'm here to do. Okay, what I will do is talk about the commandments and where we could find it. And by what I'm going to start with, though, is Leviticus 23. That no one can argue with. Okay, so we'll start with Leviticus 23, see what that says about Sukkot, the commandments with it, what to do, and then we'll talk about the species. Okay. All right, so start with the foundation, which is Leviticus 23. Okay, could somebody please read for me? Go ahead.
And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the people of Israel, saying, On the 5th day of this 7th month, and first,
15th. It's
on
okay.
the 15th day of this 7th month, and for 7 days is the feast of booths to the Lord. On the first day shall be a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work. For 7 days you shall present food offerings to the Lord. On the 8th day you shall hold a holy convocation.
Yep.
And present a food offering to the Lord. It is a solemn assembly. You shall not do any ordinary work.
Perfect. So now we have the date, which is when? The 15th of the 7th month. Anybody know what that 7th month is? Tishri. Okay, it's not September. Okay, or October. It's today? October? What's today's date? The 30th?
July is the 7th.
No, I know, but like I'm saying not this month. Like don't go by our calendar, go by their calendar. Okay? Let's see. We see that the first day is a holy convocation. That's today. You should not do any ordinary work. For 7 days you will present food offerings because that is a what? What kind of clause would that be in a suzerain vassal? It's a tribute to the king. Okay? So it is covenantal. All right. So we're going to move on. Anybody? And bear in mind, Leviticus 23, the whole chapter, is talking about not just Sukkot, Shavuot, Passover, Sabbath. It's talking about other ones. So whenever it says these appointed feasts, keep in mind it's about all of them. Okay? All right, so anybody please continue. Go ahead.
These are the appointed feasts of the Lord, which you shall proclaim as times of holy convocation for presenting to the Lord food offerings, burnt offerings and grain offerings, sacrifices and drink offerings, each on its proper day, besides the Lord's Sabbaths, and besides your gifts, besides all your vow offerings, and besides all your freewill offerings, which you give to the Lord.
Because they're tributes. Okay. All right. This is a long one. Anybody? Go ahead. Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know. On the 15th day of the 7th month, when you gathered in the produce of the land, you shall celebrate the feast of the Lord 7 days. On the first day shall be a solemn rest, and on the 8th day shall be a solemn rest. And you shall take on the first day the fruit of splendid trees, branches and palm trees, and boughs and leafy trees and willows of the brook. And you shall rejoice before the Lord of God 7 days. The Lord your God 7 days. You shall celebrate it as a feast to the Lord for 7 days in the year. It is a statute forever throughout your generations. You shall celebrate it in the 7th month. You shall dwell in booths for 7 days. All native Israelites shall dwell in booths, that your generation may know that I made the people of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God.
Okay, great. So I have a recap. Okay, so that we don't have to read and then summarize. We could just do it all together. Okay, so it's on the 15th day of the 7th month, which is the 15th of Tishri. Okay, there were two calendars. There's an agricultural and a religious one, right? And they were kind of switched. Civil and agriculture. Thank you. So civil and agriculture calendar, and then they just kind of get switched. So this 15th of Tishri. On the first day and the 8th day, there shall be a holy convocation, which we did today, which I guess to us it would be last night. Okay, and present a food offering, but there's no temple. Okay. These appointed feasts are times of holy convocation for presenting food and other offerings. Okay. It is celebrated when the produce of the land had been gathered. Again, so we do see the agricultural cycle. Okay, that's going to be super important with all of the Moedim. The first day and the 8th day shall be a solemn rest. The first day, from the fruits from the splendid trees, we're going to talk about these here in a minute. Okay, splendid trees, branches of the palm trees, boughs of leafy trees, and willows of the brook are taken. Now, it's kind of troubling because whenever you read, it's not troubling, but it's difficult. Because whenever you read this, it's not specific. So we'll talk about how we figured that out here in a bit, okay? And they are rejoicing. All right, so this is funny. We've talked about this before, and we see it a lot, especially with the Moedim, when it says, as a statute forever, okay? A king makes a ruling, okay? Can God die? No. So what about his rulings? Do they die too? No. So whenever we read forever, does it mean actually forever if God doesn't die? Yes. So should we still be doing this? Yes. There you go. Okay. All right. So we're to dwell in booths for 7 days to remember the people of Israel when they dwelled in booths when they were brought out of Egypt. So remember, one of the functions of festivals of Israel were to commemorate the past and God's place in history and God's grace in saving with his people. Okay, which is not really paralleled in the ancient Near East. So please talk about what Leviticus says about Sukkot. Now this is the foundation of what we're going to talk about in the future. Okay, so talk about what Leviticus says about Sukkot, please, with your peers.
What year?
What year? My throat is killing me.
You don't have any philosophy?
I do, but it's going to sound weird with the mic. What? I don't want to be rude because then it's like it's big though. It's not like it's a little one.
Just keep it in the
Break.
back of your
I'm almost out. It's okay. I'm not even halfway. I'll be okay. I feel like these discussions don't work. So I'm just going to skip them. What for warm-ups? I did. I was. Alrighty, let's do the review. Okay, so Leviticus 23 recap. I already did that. That's not what I meant to do. There we go. When does Sukkot start? Yes, the 15th day of the 7th month. Good. Oh, sorry, I should have asked that before I answered it. The first and 8th day shall be what? Solemn rest. But Holy Convocations also work, yes. How long are we to dwell in the booths? 7 days. It's not like you just saw it, my fault. So there are different names. This is really interesting. There are different names that Sukkot goes by. So whenever you read scriptures, it's not going to say Sukkot. It's not going to say that. It's going to have different names. And we'll see it actually today whenever we read John 7. It has different names in the chapter. So we have Festival of Booths. We have Festival of the Ingathering, which is awesome because whenever you think about Revelation and how it's prophetic, we all get ingathered in Jerusalem. Pretty cool. Season of our rejoicing. We'll read here in a second that it's a commandment to rejoice on Sukkot. And it's also called the feast. And we're going to see this one and this. We're going to see booths and the feast here in John 7. Okay, so we're going to see that context. So we'll see that in Leviticus 23, Exodus 23, Deuteronomy 16, and Leviticus 3. Okay, so those are the 4 different names. And whenever you read scripture and it says, season of our rejoicing, what's that going to be? Sukkot. That's the context. Okay, and just like kind of like with Hanukkah, it's what the Festival of Lights. That's another one for it. So whenever a lot of times folks read the New Testament and Yeshua's in the temple for this thing called the Festival of Lights, if they don't know it's Hanukkah, they don't really know what's going on. Okay. Dedication as well. Yes. All right. So those are the different names: booths, ingathering, rejoicing, and feasts. Now there are 4 basic commandments that we got to dwell. For how long? How long do we dwell? 7 days. To take the 4 species, which we're going to talk about here in a sec. To rejoice and to assemble.
What they do in Israel, they go in and kind of go there.
Yeah, at least a meal. At least a meal. Yeah. And I mean, you can if you
I feel
want.
like you're supposed
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in our days, it's kind of really hard to do that. But technically, yes, we are supposed to. So a lot of these are pretty straightforward. You got to sleep in the booths, you got to rejoice, and you have to assemble in Jerusalem. You
That's the
can't,
thing. Also, too, like you have to rejoice. You can't be like,
I guess I'm here. I'm gonna eat.
you gotta party. It's a party.
Yeah.
Like, I think it says in one of the commentaries from the last day of Sukkot, it says, I think it says, if you ever seen a party, well, if you ever seen a party,
Mm-hmm.
you've never seen one until you've seen Sukkot.
The commentary says that.
Yeah,
Yes.
something like that. Yeah.
Which one?
I read it today.
You read it today? Oh,
It
okay.
says that more for the water liberation.
The water
But
ceremony.
the sages say that you've never seen joy until you go to the temple and see how festive they are on the 8th day and when they do the water ceremony.
It's also a foreshadow of the Holy Spirit
Yeah,
and
we'll talk about
the
that.
Messiah as well.
Yeah, but they're super joyous. Yeah, you don't know what joy is until you've been there.
What was crazy is that the festival was the only one that would be held at night. Everything else was always done during the day.
Sure.
They would keep it up until night.
Cool. That's a party, man. They can party. So to do on in the booth, straightforward. Rejoice, straightforward. And to assemble in Jerusalem, straightforward. But you can't exactly do that because there's no temple. Okay. But let's talk about the 4 species, because the Torah isn't exactly specific when it comes to that. So you kind of have some guesswork. Some of them are straightforward, others aren't. Okay. So these are what they look like. Okay, we have a couple of them. I remember last year we were doing it. My favorite is the citron. Oh my gosh, it's my favorite. It's the lemon one, lemon looking one. Okay, I love it. It smells beautiful. It lasts a really long time. We could do a lot with it. That's my personal favorite. But anyways, so, huh?
I was talking about it's a weird smell. It's like sweet, but it's fruity.
It's so cool. It's really. I've never smelled anything like it. Yeah, it is a citrus. Yeah, it's a citrus. It's weird. It's so cool. All right, so the Torah, like I said, it's not explicit when it identifies them. It just says there's that, and you kind of have some guesswork. Okay, but the lulav, we identify it through oral tradition in the Talmud. It tells us. Okay, the lulav is the palm branch. The ezrog is a citron, which is the fruit of the goodly tree. If you go back to Leviticus 23, which I don't mind doing, if you want, we could read where it says fruit of that. That's what it's talking about, the ezrog, okay, the citron. The hadas is the myrtle, which is the 3 twigs of a plaited tree. And then the willow, the 2 stems of the willow. Okay, so whenever you read Leviticus 23, these are pretty straightforward, but these 2 are kind of iffy. You have to have some interpretive creation with it. Want me to go back? What was that? Sure. I think I can. So that's the ezrog. This would be the palm branches. They kind of are tied as a holder. Okay. The willow, I think, is it the one that branches out? I don't recall. I think the willow is this one, and then the plaited would be the myrtle. It's kind of hard to see. I didn't pick the bit. Oh, this is the myrtle here. This is a good picture of it. And then that's going to be the willow. Okay, but if you come tomorrow, you can. We'll have all of it. Okay, at 10 a.m. We'll be doing that. Okay. 10 a.m. Yeah. So do you want to do discussions? Be honest. It's okay if you don't. I won't hurt my feelings. I could just move on. All right, we'll move on. All right, so let's review. Hanukkah is another name for Sukkot. True or false? False. Good. What are the 4 basic commandments for Sukkot?
Dwell in the booth.
Dwell in the booth for how many days?
7.
7. Okay. To rejoice. What else? Go and assemble in Jerusalem. We can't exactly do that. What's the other one? To take not just the lulav.
What's the bunch called?
The willow, the lemon orange thing.
Is
That's
there
right.
a name for all of it? So I don't have
It is the 4 species.
called the lula.
The lulav, the whole thing? Okay, cool. Makes sense because it's a holder. All right, what are the 4 different names for Sukkot?
Feast of Booths. The symbol of rejoicing.
Good.
And a feast.
The feast
Forgot the gathering.
and gathering. Good. So what's the lulav?
The branch.
It's the branch, it's the palm. Good. It's the holder, or we just found out it's also the whole thing. Okay. What is the fruit of the goodly tree? Esrog. Good. The citron. All right. So now we're going to tie it all together with John 7. Have you all read John 7? You did today? Yeah, me too. Me too. So this is interesting because I remember back a couple years ago, I read John 7 and I was super confused because I had this like vague, horrible idea of what the temple is. Like I thought it was like that movie where the synagogue was a temple.
Actually,
Mhm.
Christ.
Yeah, it's like a tiny building like the size of the shed, right? No, it's not. But I had a horrible idea as to how orderly the temple service was because I didn't know. And so whenever I read John 7, and whenever Yeshua cries out, I'm like, rude, right? He just interrupted everything. But it's actually not true. And so we'll read the Hallel. Do we have the Siddur? We don't have it? Do you have one? It's in Spanish?
But what are you going to cover?
Because the Hallel. I want to talk about the Hallel. I don't have Wi-Fi. Oh, okay, we could do that. So during the water ceremony, which we'll talk about, there's a specific time where you read the Hallel, the Psalms, which we did today in the Micha. And there's a specific point in there where Rico thinks that he speaks out. I'm not going to tell you where because I forgot to write it down. But it's in Psalm 118. It's after it? Okay, I remember that there's like a break, and that's when it was.
Well, it keeps going.
Mhm.
It's after that chapter.
Okay, perfect. So if you have a Siddur, I would love to read it if possible because it shows it where I could use that. So let's talk about John 7 because it is connected to Sukkot. And in my Bible, I don't know about yours, but even whenever you open to it, you know how it has like the summary on top, the headings? Mine says, nope, not Jesus walks on water. Jesus at the Feast of Booths. Does it say Sukkot? No, it doesn't, but it does. It does?
Yeah.
Which one do you have?
Anticipating hostility at Sukkot.
Oh, cool. Which one is that? Tree of Life. Well, that's why. I have the ESV. Right. So, yeah. So mine says Feast of Booths. So if I don't know one of the four names of Sukkot, I have no context as to what's happening. Okay? So, Sukkot is connected to John 7. So we're going to read John 7. We're going to skip some parts where they want to hurt Yeshua because I feel like it's every chapter, man. Every chapter something happens. Yeah, always. So I skipped that part, okay, which is kind of important though because what's one of the commandments for Sukkot? Rejoice. So what about all these people trying to kill Yeshua? Were they breaking the commandment? Interesting. So we'll go ahead and read this, okay, if you don't mind, somebody. Thank you, Johnny.
It says, after this, Yeshua went about in Galilee. He would not go in Judea because the Jews were seeking to kill him. Now that the Feast of Booths was at hand, so his brother said to him, leave here and go to Judea that your disciples also may see the works you are doing. For no one works in secret if he seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world, for not even his brothers believe in him. Yeshua said to them, my time has not yet come, but your time is always here. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify about it that its works are evil. You go up to the feast. I am not going up to this feast, for my time has not yet come. After this, he remained in Galilee.
So we see already there's two of the common names for Sukkot. We see Feast of Booths and then the feast. Okay. So if you just read verse 7, or sorry, just 8, verse 8, and it says you go up to the feast, what feast? Do you know? You should know. Because unless you know the context of Sukkot and the other names, but I know a lot of people, they just start reading the verse and they're like, oh yeah, they're just going out to eat at the restaurant, at the feast. But that's not the context. Okay? Want to continue, please?
But after his brothers had gone up to the feast, then he also went up, not publicly, but in private. The Jews were looking for him at the feast and saying, where is he? There was much muttering about him among the people, while some said, he is a good man. The others said, no, he is leading people astray. Yet for the fear of the Jews, no one spoke.
So to recap, Yeshua's brother was like, hey, go to the feast. And he's like, no, it's not my time. You go. Okay, so he goes, and then he waits, and then Yeshua goes in secret. Okay, and everyone's talking about it. Okay, and then we also see the feast. So what's the feast? Sukkot. Good. Sorry, it's really long.
About the middle of the feast, Yeshua went up into the temple and began teaching. The Jews therefore marveled, saying, "How is it that this man has learning when he has never studied?" So Yeshua answered them, saying, "My teaching is not mine, but his who sent me. If anyone's will is to do God's will, you will know whether the teaching is from God or whether I am speaking on my own authority. The one who speaks on his own authority seeks his own glory, but the one who seeks the glory of him who sent him is true, and in him there is no falsehood. Has not Moses given you the law? Yet none of you keeps the law. Why do you seek to kill me?"
That's why.
And then the crowd answered, "You have a demon who is seeking to kill you."
Oh,
Yeshua answered them, "I did one work, and you all marvel at it. That Moses gave you circumcision, not that it is from Moses, but from the fathers, and you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. On the Sabbath a man receives circumcision so that the law of Moses may not be broken. Are you angry with me because on the Sabbath I made a man's whole body well? Do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment."
you know, I would hate to get into an argument with Yeshua. Like, he will call you out on every little thing. Okay.
It's in your head, literally.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Like, well, so it's actually kind of interesting, okay? Because if Yeshua, because he didn't, but if he did speak against the Torah, would he qualify as a Messiah? No. Okay, because then he's changing the covenant that God established. Okay, that's not what a Messiah would do. The Messiah, on the other hand, would uphold it and make sure that his subordinates would also keep it. Okay, that's his job. So we see, go ahead.
To clarify the bottom part, you can clarify?
Would you like to?
Sure.
I mean, I have a couple of things I want to say, but I don't know what you have in mind.
Well, to clarify, I think it's what, 23 or 22, 22 to the end.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will read that and assume that he's talking bad about the commandments. But what he's trying to say, he's making an argument. He says, look, if you guys circumcise somebody on the Sabbath, and that's okay, why is it wrong for me to heal somebody on the Sabbath? Because if you guys remember earlier, he healed a man on the Sabbath and told him to get up and walk. And for them, they're like, whoa, you made him, you can't do that. That's breaking the Sabbath.
The house of Shammai was against praying for others on Sabbath.
Yeah, for them, that was work. And for him to get up and carry his bed, that's like extra work. So, but that was something that they added. It's not something that's in the Torah.
Gotcha.
And that's why Yeshua had an issue with a lot of the sects of the Sadducees and people.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying. But what I had in mind was talking about in the middle of the feast and what he was teaching, because I think that's really interesting. So in the middle of the feast, we have two special Sabbaths in Sukkot and one weekly Sabbath. Okay, so yesterday was a special one, or today.
It depends
yesterday.
on how it falls.
Exactly,
Usually,
but it's always going to be 2 and 1. So in this case, in this year, the special one also fell on the regular weekly one. However, there's always going to be a weekly one, and that's going to be next week. Literally the day after is another special one. Okay, so it goes special, normal, special, right after. Okay, even though this is a normal weekly Sabbath, it's elevated because it's one of the special ones. Okay, it's the first day. So in the middle of the feast, kind of stuck out to me because I'm like, okay, what is it? Just like a normal Wednesday? No, it's actually the weekly Sabbath, which is pretty cool. So it goes special Sabbath, weekly Sabbath, special Sabbath. So on the weekly Sabbath, from this book here, I bought it at Joe Good's at the Temple Conference. Tabernacles in Sukkot, when the Messiah feasts with Jews and Gentiles by Zaid Reuven. I bought it from Joe Good, so I'm sure it's reputable. But in that, it has a chart, which I found pretty interesting. In the chart, see if I can find it real quick. And I'm never able to, and there we go. So this chart right here, it tells you what they would read from on these days. Okay? On like every day, they would do readings. And on this one, can you say it for me? The Sabbath? Chol Hamoed. Thank you. On that one, which is the weekly Sabbath, which in our case would be next week. Okay, on the Sabbath of next week. They read Exodus 33. They read Numbers 29, Ecclesiastes, and this I found really interesting. Ezekiel 38 to 39, which is Gog and Magog. So, are you all familiar with Gog and Magog? I'm not going to go into depth because Gog and Magog has a lot of opinions on it. A lot. But the only thing that everyone seems to agree on is it is prophetic for the coming of the Messiah. Okay, actually Zechariah 14 also talks about what happens after the wars of Gog and Magog. And they all go to Jerusalem and they do Sukkot. Okay, so this is a timeline. Go ahead.
No, and what's funny is the nations have paid tribute. It's like you said, Sukkot.
Exactly, you have to pay tribute. So cool. It's so cool. So it is actually tied to suzerain vassal covenant, which we've been talking about all year. So this is not the pinnacle of it, but it's we didn't really talk about paying tribute. So I wanted to take advantage of that today because that's what pilgrimage festivals are. Bless you. So wars of Gog and Magog, not talking about that. Gog and Magog has a lot of different branches we could go down. I don't want to go down any, okay, because I don't want to cause an argument or anything like that. However, it is about the coming of the Messiah. So let's picture this right now. He is in the temple on the weekly Sabbath teaching. And he gets into this argument, okay? And this argument, but what is he teaching about? Not just Gog and Magog, but what is Gog and Magog talking about?
Well, when you read that specific section, it's going to be about the Messiah.
Exactly. So he's talking about himself in the temple, okay, which is huge foreshadow for what happens here in a second whenever we read that he kind of reveals himself, which is what Sukkot's about.
A lot of people, Christians, when you read that, they assume that he's just doing like a random teaching.
No, it's not.
Type of thing. No.
Yep. I remember I was like, oh, great, he's doing a little preaching about how we don't have to keep the commandments, right? But no, it was literally about revealing himself in the war of Gog and Magog, right? Which Zechariah 14 talks about after the war, which is Gog and Magog. They all go to Jerusalem for Sukkot, which is so cool. Okay? So, go ahead.
I was going to say it's like a little side thing, but when you read Ezekiel 38 to 39, 16, it also talks about how when it like sets up the lots for Israel, that the foreigners are also those that are not part of Israel. That's all.
That's so cool. Alrighty. So I want us to continue because Yeshua reveals who he is at the temple in front of everybody. So let's talk about that. You mind?
On the last day of the feast, the great day, Yeshua stood up and cried out, "If anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as the scriptures have said, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water." Now this he said about the Spirit, with whom those who believed in him were saved, for as yet the Spirit has not yet been given, Yeshua is not yet.
So Johnny was telling me today that the verse 39 of this could we say it's like the writer's notes?
Well, when you read it in the KJV, it's going to be in parentheses. From what I understand, either it's not in the original Greek, or it's a writer's like afterthought.
Right.
But
okay.
I don't know about that.
So take it with a grain of salt. Take verse 39 with a grain of salt. Okay. But what's really important is verse 37 to 38. Okay. On the last day, the great day. Okay. Yep. Yeshua would stand up and cry out, "If anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink." When would he do this? This is my question. Did he just like interrupt the offerings? Well, you think he would do that? No. Okay, because he's very familiar with the temple. Okay, so there's a specific time he would do that, which would be after Psalm 118. Do you have it?
No. That's a name. Just say it.
Okay, that's fine. So actually, I'll use mine. No, I'm not used to that language. So in Psalms 113 to Psalm 118 are the Hallel. Okay, and that we just did it actually during the Mincha, which I thought was perfect. I'm like, heck yes, I'm going to be talking about this.
Those psalms are going to be composed by Levites.
Yes, and they're sung on the stairs ascending to the Nicanor Gate, which I have a picture of. Okay, so starting from Psalm 113, they would read it. Okay, they would sing it on those steps, and at the end, I want to read it. Let me see. This is pretty interesting. We just read it, but there's a specific part where it talks about salvation. Okay. Yeah, there it is. Glad songs of salvation are in the tents of the righteous. The right hand of the Lord does valiantly. The right hand of the Lord exalts. The right hand of the Lord does valiantly. Who's the right hand of the Lord? Who sits on the right hand? Yeshua. It's the Messiah. Okay, that's the throne of David. Okay? So it's already right there. They're talking about Yeshua. I shall not die, but I shall live and recount the deeds of the Lord. The Lord has disciplined me severely, but he has not given me over to death. Open to me the gates of righteousness, that I may enter through them and give thanks to the Lord. This is the gate of the Lord; the righteous shall enter through it. Just for context, this is where they're going to be, right there. Okay, they're going to be standing right here, singing this. Okay, so imagine you're standing there. The gates would be open, so you could see the Azarah. Okay, where the altar is and all that.
The people who
On the steps.
stand on
On the steps. They'll be standing on the steps. The Levites.
the Israelites were there.
No, the Levites were standing there, and they would be singing with the music, lyres, and all that stuff. Open to me the gates of righteousness. So imagine you're standing there. Open to me the gates of righteousness, that I may enter through them and give thanks to the Lord. This is the gate of the Lord. The righteous shall enter through it. I thank you that you have answered me and become my salvation. The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone.
Yeah, it's funny because he refers to himself as the gate.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, the gate. I remember. Yeah, I used that whenever we talked about Passover. It's pretty cool. He's a threshold and everything. It's pretty cool. This is the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in your eyes that this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad. What are we supposed to do on Sukkot? Rejoice and be glad. Okay. Save us, we pray, O Lord. O Lord, we pray, give us success. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Yeshua. Imagine being right there. And Yeshua's like, hey guys, it's me. You're singing about me. It's pretty cool. We bless you from the house of the Lord. The Lord is God. He has made us. He has made his light to shine upon us. Bind the festal sacrifice with cords up to the horns of the altar. You are my God. I will give thanks to you. You are my God. I will extol you. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, and his steadfast love endures forever. That's all about Messiah. Okay, so that's huge context for John 7. Okay, so whenever he stands up and he says, drink from me, okay, drink from me if you're thirsty. He said that to the Samaritan woman as well. Okay, so now we know in this context in John 7, it's regarding the Sukkot and the specific event in mind, which is the water ceremony, which is on the last day. Okay, so after the Tamid, daily offering, an offering of wine was usually poured on the altar. Okay, but in this instance, it would. Is it raining? Oh dang. Yep. So in addition to wine, it would also be water. They would go down to the Shiloh pool, bring up the water, and do that. Okay, but on Sukkot, yep. So Psalms 113 to 118, we just talked about it. That was a Hallel. We also did that during the Mincha. Okay, they would stand at the Nicanor gate on those steps. The Levites would. Sorry, I need to clarify that. The Levites would stand there and sing.
For the
Okay.
water libation.
For the water.
They're going back, going from the pools.
Shiloh.
So they go
I think.
from there and they
Right?
climb all
Is that
the way
what you
up there.
Shiloh. Okay.
So they go from there, they climb all the way up, and as they're going up the steps, then they read
Yep.
Psalms 113 to 18, because usually they read the other one when they're climbing up the steps.
Mm-hmm. It was
121 to 134. So this is for the libation, the water libation, which also has a. Well, they're doing the song because they're doing the water libation. It's different because I think the 121 to 134 is the one they go up the steps.
Gotcha. So you could find more information about the water ceremony in Sukkah 5 in the Mishnah. Okay, it's actually really, really important. It's one of the greatest ceremonies done. You want to tell the story about the high priest?
Well, the thing is, like, there was an issue with the Sadducees and the Pharisees. There's an issue with the Sadducees and the Pharisees because they had different beliefs. Like the Sadducees, they didn't believe in resurrection. They thought we lived here once and that was it. So they're really focused on like worldly stuff and riches and things like that. So they also didn't believe in this because if you look at the Torah, there's nothing that says about water libation. There's no water ceremony. So they didn't believe in it. So there was one high priest that was Sadducee, and instead of pouring it on the altar, he poured it on his feet. So everybody got really upset with him, and they threw those giant lemons at him. They almost killed him with those lemons. Because I don't know if you guys ever held one of those lemons, but they're pretty.
They're dense.
Yeah.
They are dense.
So he almost died because he didn't believe in that. Where is that? I think it says it. It's a commentary. I think it's Sukkot 43
Sukkah 43 in the Talmud?
in the Talmud.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Because I do remember reading it on My Jewish Learning. They did talk about that. But yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. All right, so this ceremony here is all about the outpouring of the Holy Spirit and the revealing of the Messiah. So let's go back. I want us to go back. You're here, okay, you're singing the Hallel songs, bless you. You're singing the Hallel songs, and at the end, okay, the guy's got the water, okay, and Yeshua gets up and says, whoever believes in me, or if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as the scriptures have said, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water. He just literally told everybody who he was. Because what was this about? Outpouring of the Holy Spirit and revealing of the Messiah. He revealed to everybody who he was. And yes, everybody tried to get him. Okay, they always do. But they didn't get him because the hour hasn't come. Okay, but he also, in doing this, he quotes Isaiah 12. Now, it could also be argued that he talks about Isaiah 55. Okay, or he could have done both. However, for this instant, let's look at Isaiah 12, and I want us to consider the connections that Yeshua makes to Isaiah. Okay, and what Isaiah says. Can somebody please read?
Okay.
Oh, want to read it?
Okay.
I'll read it.
Go ahead.
I'll look at the top.
Yes, please.
You will say.
Bless you.
No. You will say in that day, I will give thanks to you, O Lord, for though you were angry with me, your anger turned away, that you may comfort me. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. The Lord God is my strength and my song, and he will become my salvation. With joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation.
What's up?
With joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation. And you will say in that day, give thanks to the Lord, call upon his name, make known his deeds among the peoples, proclaim that his name is exalted. Sing praises to the Lord, for he has done gloriously. Let this be made known in all the earth. Shout and sing for joy, O inhabitant of Zion, for great in your midst is the Holy One.
Go ahead.
Something that's really interesting is verse 3, with joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation. Yeshua in Hebrew translates to salvation. So, and you could also read it, with joy you will draw water from the wells of Yeshua.
And this guy just said, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. So he's saying that he's the wells of salvation. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, just mic drop. Okay, on top of him saying, y'all sinners, he's also like, hey, by the way, I'm the Messiah. Okay, and then they will reject, in the Psalms we read about it, that the stone that was rejected will be the chief cornerstone. And that happens. It's beautiful. It's actually beautiful. Okay, so do you want to discuss or not? It's up to you. This is your chance. Would you like to? So let's do this one, okay? Talk about how John 7 is connected to Sukkot. We talked about many different layers. Let's talk about it.
I know. We would never know, like, if we didn't have a background of, like, knowing festivals, knowing, different Christianity. I read that, and we would sing songs like, Jesus is the living water, and blah, blah, blah. We had no idea. No, we didn't understand the living water connection. This is Jesus' salvation.
That's why I was going to look this up. Verse 39. I feel like in the context of Sukkot, like they should have let us. That's why I'm not sure. I actually know that's
then his cousin, Zechariah had it.
Like last year.
Yeah, last year. It was like last year.
Because then John is
So I
also
forgot
his
what he
cousin.
said about it. He didn't say that. I think it's
Because Mary's cousin was
All right, let's go ahead and review.
Wait, Kaylin has something.
Oh, go ahead.
No, we're discussing. We're trying to always get
Oh,
Didn't Zechariah?
You should have a cousin.
Zechariah.
yeah.
John
John. Yeah.
was his cousin. Yeah.
When did Yeshua teach on Sukkot? Yeah. When? What's specific? In the middle, which was the weekday or the weekly Sabbath. Okay, you remember there's two special ones, one in the beginning, one in the end, and there's always going to be a weekly one. That's when he was teaching. What was he most likely teaching from on that weekday Sabbath? The Bible, yes.
Ezekiel 38
to 39. Yes. So that's going to be the War of Gog and Magog. Okay. Blank 14 is prophetic for Sukkot after Gog and Magog. Zechariah. Which ceremony is crucial to understand John 7? Not just Sukkot. The water ceremony. Good. What's your question? Oh, okay. What is the water ceremony about?
I don't think we really talked about
Salvation, the outward of the Lord.
Yes, that and the revealing of the Messiah.
But I feel like the reason why they do this ceremony is because it comes from the verses talking about the water coming from the temple. That's what they do this ceremony.
What did Yeshua quote in John 7:37 to 39?
So,
I am water.
Sorry.
What did he quote from in these verses? Isaiah 12. Good. Or it could be argued 55. Okay? Alrighty. So let's summarize real quick. Okay? I told you it was going to be pretty short. We're almost there. And then we also have a booklet, okay, based on the notes. So, Sukkot is a pilgrimage festival with historical context in suzerain vassal treaties. The covenant relationship in the Torah extends to each individual, not just the kings. Okay, to each individual. Remember, we were told that we were kings and priests. Okay, the vassal is required to appear regular before the suzerain and pay tribute. Okay, to bring a tribute. That's what the what's it called? I just mine went blank. Pilgrimage festivals are. Okay, pagan festivals involve banquets for gods to feed them. While Israelite festivals focus on commemorating God's role in history and saving his people. Sukkot is celebrated on the 15th of the 7th month, which is Tishrei. The Feast of Booths is a time of holy convocation and offering to the Lord. Again, covenantal context. Okay, the 4 basic commandments are dwelling, taking of the 4 species that we talked about, the rejoicing and assembling in Jerusalem. You can't exactly do. I mean, you can, but you can't bring offerings or anything, okay? The 4 species were the lulav, ezrog, the hadas, and the arava. Sukkot is connected to Yeshua in John 7 during the water ceremony. Okay, and Yeshua quotes Isaiah 12, which is about the wells of salvation, the water of salvation, okay, which is literally translated to wells of Yeshua. Okay, so that's what I have today, which is going to be short, but I think we pretty much nailed it for a little activity at the end. Does anybody have any questions about it? No? All right, well, I appreciate it. Go ahead.
I told you so the Esrog.
Yep.
Normally would say Esrog.
Really?
The T, but Esrog with an S is pronunciation.
Okay. Interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. It's pretty cool. I'm asking. Any other questions for y'all? All right, we're good. I appreciate you. Thank you.